In Swara Yoga, the function of the breath is very scientific. When the awareness is observed in the breath, in its movement, in its sound, it becomes the vehicle for traversing the superficial layers of the mind and attaining higher experience beyond the influence of external senses. Yoga and Tantra explains that breath vibrates with the force of prana. Vibrations cannot exist without creating a sound frequency. Therefore, the breath also has a scientific sound which is heard at a particular level of consciousness. In the Yoga of Chundamandani Upanishad, it is explained that the breath goes out, making the sound of hum, and comes in producing the sound of so, whereby the jiva continuously repeats the mantra of the sound hum so 21,600 times every 24 hours. This continual repetition of the mantra is known as ajapa japa. The Upanishad further states that by conscious mental repetitions of mantra, soham with the breath, and the mantra manifests as an audible sound in the inner ear. On hearing this, one becomes freed from karma and samskar. To investigate this claim, we will have to experience the mantra of the breath, and we will have to experience its effect at the different levels of mind and consciousness. Dimensions of sound. The sound we hear with the ears and the faculty of the brain is the only one level of perception. If sound wave exists at the conscious level, they must also exist at the subtle levels. The human ear has a very limited range of perception. We know that cats, dolphins, bats, and many other animals have such an accurate sense of hearing that they can perceive frequency of an inaudible to the human ear. As the frequency becomes higher, our ears fail to pick up the vibrations. Although we do not hear the subtle sound of the breath, it creates sound waves in the deeper realms of our consciousness. As the breath becomes finer, the sound frequencies become more intense and subtle. In this way, they are heard internally from the subconscious realm, then the unconscious, and finally the superconscious, where sound becomes transcendental. Normally, we are unable to perceive the existence of the sound in those realms because we are unaware of those parts of our mind. Those centers of our brain are not active, but when we can experience the subconscious area of the mind with awareness, then the sound manifesting in the mind, that realm, also can become audible. The same principle applies in the regard to consciousness and transcendental vibrations. The ancient rishis and yogis who had contacted deeper levels of the mind through meditations perceived the sound of subtler vibrations. Before entering the transcendental state, they heard the sound of the outgoing and ingoing breath, the sound of the hum so hum so hum. Sound also exists in the dimension of Truya, but then there is no individual mind to perceive it. That is the sound of the vibration of the universe, the vibration of the Om. In the unconscious realm, there is the sound of hum so. When you remove the individuality of the infinite mind, the veil between hum and so is lifted. Hum is Shakti, the individual Jiva. So is Shiva, the cosmic consciousness. The sound of the breath is the direct link between the lower and higher experience. Mantra of the breath. When we speak of mantra in relation to the breath, what does it actually signify? A mantra is more than a sound vibration. The word mantra is made up of two roots: man, which means contemplation, and tra, which means of liberate. When the transcendental sound of the breath is repeatedly perceived, the consciousness becomes liberated or freed from the finite mind. The mantra of the breath releases the inherent energies required for this liberation. This is not religious terminology, it is purely scientific. The root man also means reflection, manana. Mantra brings liberation through reflection, and the same process takes place in regard to the breath. By reflection on the sound of the breath, it becomes realized and the mind becomes absorbed in that manifestation. When this happens, the consciousness is no longer bound to the sensual world. It becomes one with the sound vibration at deeper levels of the mind. Yantra of the breath. The Upanishads declare that liberation of consciousness from mind is freedom from samskar and karma. So, what is this relationship between the mind and karma? Every experience of the five organs of sense and the five organs of the action is stored in the subconscious and unconscious mind in a particular geometrical form known as yantra. When you see an object or smell an odor, when something makes you happy or sad, the memory of that experience is stored in symbolic form, which represents the whole experience. It is similar to the DNA molecule, which is complete representation of the entire genetic makeup. In the same way, every experience in your life is recorded in a significant symbolic form called a yantra. Thus, the mantra of the breath is a sound vibration and the yantra is the form. Repetition of the mantra with the breath brings the mind into subconscious level and then it goes deeper into the unconscious. When the consciousness is observed in the deeper realms of the mind and there are no external distractions, then the yantra of the breath manifests and become a living experience. Reflection on the yantra is therefore the process of concentrating the mind until it arrives at a final point of illumination. On reaching that point of concentration where the yantra becomes manifest, an explosion of energy occurs. The same thing is explained in the Tantras, where it is stated that the two poles of relativity, Shiva and Shakti, time and space, come together and meet in the nucleus. Then creation bursts forth into existence. Hence, you could even say that concentration on the breath yantra subsequently leads to what people call a mind-blowing experience. Concentration of mind. Concentrating on the mantra or yantra of the breath is one of the most powerful methods of innervating the restless mind. The process of concentration has four stages: introversion, patyahara, concentration, dharana, meditation, dhyana, and finally, transcendence, samadhi. These four distinct stages represent the distance between the two aspects or poles of the mind and perception. The word concentration implies one pointedness which increases in the strength by the contraction of the volume. In the practice of concentration, this is what happens to the mind. During pratyahara, the two poles of time and space begin to separate from normal conscious perception. In dharana, they reach their opposite position. In dhyana, they begin to move closer together. And in samadhi, they meet again at the same nucleus. Then the explosion takes place and awareness of the mantra is left behind in the reality of finite mind. Thus, consciousness breaks out of the limited individual experience represented by Soham into the cosmic experience of the Om.